Boy, it was one of the most powerful moments, wasn't it, of the prosecution's opening statement that you've seen. Prosecutor Sheila Polk there saying the three victims went to the sweat lodge looking for personal growth and wisdom, and that they found death. Now, this is a huge case getting national attention, obviously, but we want to know how it's affecting people locally as well. Criminal defense attorney Dwane Cates is joining me now from Camp Verde, Arizona. Thank you so much, Mr. Cates, for being with us.
Thank you.
Sure. So I know a lot of people have very strong reactions to this case. How are the people there in Camp Verde feeling regarding James Ray and this trial?
Well, it's really interesting because the people I've talked to, and since I've known that I'm going to be on the show, I've talked to a lot of people about this case. And some people think James Ray is a money-grubbing charlatan, and some people think James Ray is a spiritual leader. So from all the people I've talked to, it's kind of split 50-50. You can't, the local knowledge is quite split.
And they obviously, do you think these people have preconceived notions of him prior to this case, or they're just kind of spouting what they've learned from the trial itself?
Well, I don't think they had preconceived notions. I think if you did a poll of 100 people before this case, and if you asked them if they thought that a sweat lodge was a substantial and unjustifiable risk of death, most of the people would have said no. But since this trial's happened and since this case has been going, I think that a lot of people would say, well, yeah, it probably is a risk of death. So I think the publicity in the trial has affected the public opinion quite a bit.
I want to play some sound from defense attorney Luis Lee as he's trying to describe to us who James Ray is. Let's listen to this.
Now I want to address one thing. Now we come to this sort of adults can't choose for themselves theory, this cult theory. You know, I mean, you probably heard it in the state's case, barely disguised, that Mr. Ray is somehow a cult leader. That somehow he overbore people's will with words. Like he's some kind of religious figure. He's not.
You cannot deny what this man was. I mean, James Ray, to thousands of people, was a star. I mean, he contributed to The Secret, which was a best-selling book and DVD. He was a self-help guru. He was an inspirational speaker. So I'm curious, how do you think his persona, in general, affects this trial?
Well, I think it's going to have a profound effect. You have to understand that jurors aren't law trained, and so lawyers like to get into the minutia of substantial and unjustifiable risk and the definitions, but what jurors rely on is a gut feeling and an overall sense of who the person is. Now, you can see it in the trial is that the prosecutor is trying to demonize James Ray and make him out to be a money grubber, and he's in it for the money. And the defense is clearly on the other side of that. They're trying to make James Ray out to be just a sort of a regular guy that's trying to help people on a spiritual path. So, I mean, it's really evident that, and it's going to be really important in this trial, how James Ray comes off and what his, what the people think of him at the end of the day.
Well, what do you think so far in terms of what the prosecution has shown with these witnesses? Have they been able, do you think, to prove some sort of negligence by James Ray?
Well, now there's different kinds of negligence. Now, if you're talking about civil negligence in a civil trial, I think it's pretty clear that he was negligent the way he operated the sweat lodge. But we're talking about a lot more than that. Now, manslaughter takes a substantial and unjustifiable risk. You have to have that to start with to convict him of anything. And then for manslaughter, he had to know that people were going to die. I mean, he had to know that that there was a substantial risk of death. And I think it's going to be really hard to prove that because he was in the sweat lodge with them. He'd conducted prior sweat lodges. Nobody had ever died. In fact, there'd only been a couple other people ever need medical attention because of his sweat lodges. So I think they're going to have a real hard time proving that he was that he knew that they were going to die. But in Arizona, you can go to lesser included offenses, and a lesser included offense of this is negligent homicide. Now, negligent homicide requires that he ignored the risk, that he failed to perceive that there was a substantial risk of death in this case. And I think that the state's going to have a lot easier time proving that than they are going to prove negligent or manslaughter.
Now, in terms of negligent homicide, let's just say that maybe that would be, as you say, more provable in this case. What is the kind of consequence that's attached to a conviction of that sort, of negligent homicide?
Well, negligent homicide is pretty much half the punishment of manslaughter. Manslaughter carries a presumptive term of 5 years for each person, and negligent homicide is 2.5 years. Now, something nobody's really talked about is I believe that James Ray, given that he's never had any prior felony convictions or anything, would be probation eligible in this case. Now, I don't know if the judge would give him probation, but I believe he'd be probation eligible.
Would you put him on the stand if he were your client?
Well, you know, criminal defense attorneys really don't like putting their client on the stand, but James Ray's kind of a different kind of person. He is a professional speaker. He's very good at speaking and getting across what he wants. Now, as long as he doesn't get on the stand and go, winning, you know, he's probably got a pretty good chance.
Right, but you would think that because he is an experienced speaker, would that play in his favor, or would, you know, the jury know that and think, oh, he's just faking it?
Well, you know, it's going to be really hard. Now, if I were going to put James Ray on the stand in this case, I would conduct a focus group first. That's where I would hire a group of people, probably from a rural area, and I would sit down and I would do a mock, direct, and cross-examination with him and see how he comes off. Now, if he comes off as slick and arrogant, it's going to kill him. If he comes off as compassionate and really, truly remorseful that these people died, then it can work in his favor.
All righty. Criminal defense attorney Dwane Cate, so good to get your perspective. Thank you for taking some time to join us, especially this early in the morning as it is for you.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I have to admit to you, I have kind of a unique perspective about this case now because I participated in a sweat lodge ceremony over the weekend with In Session's Ryan Smith and HLN's Jane Velez Mitchell. We're going to show you what it was like there. Also this afternoon, In Session is taking you to Orlando.